Every phone in your pocket, every electric car on the road, every fighter jet, every wind turbine, every guided missile built anywhere on Earth. All of them depend on 17 elements most people have never heard of. They are called rare earth elements, and despite the name, they are not actually rare. What is rare is who controls them. Imagine 10 factories on Earth that can turn raw rock into these materials. More than 8 of them are in one country. Not because that country got lucky with geology, because it made a decision decades ago that almost nobody else was willing to make, and the rest of the world is only now waking up to what that decision cost them. If you find that as unsettling as I do, hit like and subscribe, because this story gets a lot stranger the deeper you go. The hidden ingredient in everything. Rare earth elements have names like neodymium, dysprosium, and terbium, and if those sound unfamiliar, that is by design. They never appear on a product label. Nobody advertises what is inside the products you buy. But open up an electric car motor, and hidden inside is a magnet no bigger than the palm of your hand. Pull that one magnet out, and the entire vehicle becomes dead weight. That tiny piece of metal is holding together a $40,000 machine. Here is a number that should stop you for a second. A single smartphone contains less than $1 worth of rare earth materials. Strip those elements out, and the phone in your pocket stops working entirely. $1 of materials standing between a $1,000 device and a useless brick. It gets bigger from there. A single offshore wind turbine can require hundreds of kilograms of rare earth magnets buried inside the generator at the top of the tower. An F-35 fighter jet reportedly uses several hundred kilograms of rare earth materials across its radar, engines, and guidance systems. Take those elements away, and some of the most advanced machines humans have ever built simply stop functioning, not run less efficiently. Stop. The decision nobody else was willing to make. Here is the part that surprises most people. The United States used to dominate this industry completely. A single mine in Mountain Pass, California, supplied most of the world's rare earths through the 1960s, the 70s, and into the 1980s. America had the deposits, the processing plants, and the expertise all in one place, all at once. Then something happened that nobody fully appreciated at the time. Refining rare earth ore is one of the dirtiest processes in modern industry. Separating these elements from raw rock takes powerful acids and leaves behind large volumes of toxic, mildly radioactive waste. As environmental laws tightened across the United States through the 1980s and 90s, that waste became someone else's problem to solve, and nobody wanted to solve it at home. China was willing to solve it. The government made a calculated decision to absorb the environmental cost that everyone else was walking away from, and it backed that decision with heavy state investment. Chinese producers also priced their materials so aggressively low that mines in other countries simply could not compete and survive. Mountain Pass shut down completely in 2002. Within a decade, China was not just mining the most rare earth ore on Earth. It had built the only processing infrastructure capable of turning that ore into something usable at a scale nobody else could match. By the late 1990s, something almost unbelievable had quietly happened. America still had the minerals sitting in the ground. Australia still had the mines. Europe still had the engineers. And yet, almost without anyone noticing, the entire world had made itself dependent on one country to finish the job. The moment the world found out what that meant. In September of 2010, a Chinese fishing trawler collided with 2 Japanese Coast Guard vessels near a disputed set of islands in the East China Sea. The captain was detained by Japan. Within days, rare earth shipments from China to Japan slowed to a crawl. Officially, nothing was ever announced. Unofficially, Japanese electronics manufacturers found themselves suddenly unable to secure the materials their factories needed to keep running. That was the moment governments around the world understood, all at once, exactly what 80% control actually meant in practice. It was not just an economic statistic sitting in a trade report. It was leverage that could be applied instantly, quietly, and without ever being formally declared. Japan spent the next decade building stockpiles and funding mines in other countries specifically so it would never be caught in that position again. Most of the rest of the world kept doing nothing. The bottleneck nobody talks about. Here is the detail that gets lost in almost every conversation about rare earths. Mining the raw ore is actually the easy part. Australia has workable deposits. The United States has workable deposits. Myanmar has workable deposits. The real bottleneck sits one step later, in refining, the complex chemical process of separating raw ore into individually pure, usable elements. That is where the concentration turns extreme. According to data compiled by the International Energy Agency and independent mining analysts, China currently processes approximately 83% of the world's rare earth supply, even after accounting for or mined elsewhere. Raw material dug out of the ground in Australia routinely gets shipped halfway around the world to Chinese facilities because building comparable processing capacity anywhere else would take years and cost billions. That means the finished material, not just the raw rock, runs through one country's factories. A car manufacturer in Germany, an electronics company in South Korea, a defense contractor in the United States. All of them can mine or anywhere they like. Almost all of them still need China to turn it into something they can actually use. The world starts scrambling. Governments have finally started treating this as a real strategic vulnerability rather than a line item in a trade report. In 2022, the United States passed legislation directing billions of dollars toward rebuilding domestic processing capacity, including a new separation facility tied to the reopened Mountain Pass mine. Australia has partnered with Japanese firms to build its own separation plants specifically to cut reliance on Chinese refining. The European Union passed a Critical Raw Materials Act, setting formal targets to process a meaningful share of its own supply domestically by 2030. None of these efforts are moving fast. Building rare earth processing capacity from nothing takes years of permitting, specialized chemical engineering, and enormous upfront capital. Several proposed Western facilities have already faced delays and funding shortfalls since being announced. The gap between announcing an alternative and actually operating one is measured in years, sometimes a full decade. What could actually change? There are three real paths out of this dependency, and each one is already in motion somewhere. New processing plants in the United States, Australia, and Europe are slowly coming online, chipping away at the concentration one facility at a time. Recycling programs are being developed to pull rare earths back out of old electronics and retired wind turbines instead of mining new or from scratch. And materials scientists in multiple countries are actively researching magnet designs that use less rare earth material or none at all, though none of those substitutes have matched the performance of the real thing yet. If those efforts hold their current pace, industry analysts project China's share could fall from 83% to somewhere closer to 60 or 65% by the early 2030s. That would be a real shift. It would still leave one country holding a commanding majority of a supply chain that almost everything electronic depends on. The next time you unlock your phone, there is a good chance the materials inside it were mined in one country and refined half a world away, in a country that made a decision decades ago that everyone else was too cautious or too comfortable to make themselves. Most people will never think about that supply chain. Governments no longer have the luxury of ignoring it. If this changed how you think about the phone in your hand or the car in your driveway, hit like and subscribe for more stories about the hidden systems quietly running the modern world. And tell me in the comments, if you were building a country strategy from scratch today, what resource would you make sure you never depended on someone else for?